The massive command bridge of the Cathar flagship Invincible Dominion hummed with activity. Holodisplays flickered with star charts and tactical overlays, while officers moved with practiced efficiency between their stations. Commander Zorgith stood at the central platform, his tall, imposing figure a monument to Cathar military perfection. 4 centuries of genetic refinement had gifted his species with natural armor, enhanced strength, and heightened senses, advantages that had fueled their expansion across known space. Zorgith's crimson eyes narrowed as he surveyed his fleet deployed in perfect formation. 15 warships, from nimble strike cruisers to the ponderous dreadnoughts, all maintained their designated positions with unwavering precision. This border patrol mission was routine, a show of force to remind the lesser species on the fringe worlds of Cathar supremacy. The Empire had held dominion over this sector for millennia, incorporating or subjugating dozens of pre-space species. Status report. Zorgith commanded, his voice carrying the distinctive metallic resonance of high-caste Cathar. Subcommander Vrax stepped forward, data tablet in hand. Fleet deployment optimal, Commander. Long-range scans show no unusual activity in sectors 17 through 24. As expected, the primitive settlements on Bellows 3 have increased their defensive formation since our last patrol, but nothing that warrants concern. Zorgith nodded with satisfaction. The Cathar military doctrine emphasized regular shows of force, a preventive measure against potential rebellions. Lesser species needed to be reminded of their place. Excellent. Maintain current course and... Commander, the urgent voice of Sensor Officer Keldrax cut through the bridge's ambient noise. Anomalous reading detected at extreme scanner range, bearing 227 to 43. Zorgith frowned, turning toward the sensor station. Specify. Single vessel. Unknown configuration. Keldrax's fingers flew across his console, adjusting parameters. Not matching any known design in our database. A murmur of curiosity rippled through the bridge crew. In a region so thoroughly cataloged by the Empire, an unknown vessel was unusual. Zorgith maintained his composed demeanor, though a flicker of interest crossed his features. Stray explorer, perhaps? Or a trading vessel from beyond the Crimson Nebula? He suggested, making his way to the sensor station. Unknown, Commander. But Keldrax hesitated, recalibrating his instruments. Energy signature is unusual, not consistent with known propulsion systems. Vrax snorted dismissively. Some primitive species trying their hand at interstellar travel, no doubt. A curiosity, nothing more. Conduct a full scan, Zorgith ordered, ignoring his second-in-command's dismissal. The Cathar Empire had not maintained its dominance for 20,000 years by underestimating potential threats. The bridge fell silent as the advanced sensor arrays of the Invincible Dominion focused on the distant object. The main view screen shifted to display the mysterious vessel. Zorgith felt his inner membrane flicker in surprise. The ship was sleek, elegant in a completely alien way. No jutting weapon arrays or external engines like Cathar vessels. Instead, it possessed a smooth, almost organic flow to its design, with subtle contours that suggested both efficiency and purpose. It was relatively small, perhaps a quarter the size of his flagship, but something about it triggered an instinctive wariness. Tactical assessment, he demanded. Weapons Officer Mordcal stepped forward, confusion evident in his stance. Difficult to determine, Commander. The hull composition is unlike anything in our records. Detecting what appear to be weapon emplacements, but configuration is unconventional. Their course? Zorgith asked, his voice betraying nothing of his growing concern. That's the unusual part, sir, Keldrax replied. They're heading directly toward us. Speed increasing. Vrax straightened, his earlier dismissiveness evaporating. A deliberate intercept course. Before anyone could respond, Communications Officer Thrax's voice cut through the tension. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. In perfect High Cathar. Zorgith felt his spinal plate stiffen. High Cathar was the language of the Imperial elite, not something outsiders could easily master with its complex tonal variations and subvocal components. "Put it through," he ordered. A voice filled the bridge, clear, confident, and unmistakably non-Cathar. The accent was perfect, but carried an alien cadence that sent an involuntary shiver through Zorgith's armored frame. "Attention, Cathar battle fleet. This is Captain Eva Rostova of the Terran Warship Aegis. You have entered sovereign space of the Terran Confederacy. Your vessels are to power down weapons systems, reduce speed, and alter course away from this sector within 15 minutes. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences. This is your only warning." Silence enveloped the bridge, the sort of silence that follows an unthinkable event. Then, almost in unison, the command staff erupted in incredulous reactions. "The audacity!" Vrax snarled. "Some unknown species daring to threaten a Cathar battle fleet. Terran? Confederacy? No such entity exists in our records," the intelligence officer muttered, frantically searching databases. Zorgith raised a hand, silencing his crew. "Open a channel." When Thraxa nodded, confirming the link, Zorgith spoke with the full authority of his position. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Zorgith of the Imperial Cathar Navy. You address the vanguard of the greatest empire in known space. Your ignorance of this fact is the only reason you still exist. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded or be destroyed." The response came immediately, the woman's voice unchanged in its calm determination. "Commander Zorgith, your reputation precedes you. However, your information is outdated. The Cathar Empire is not the unchallenged force you believe it to be. I repeat, you have 14 minutes remaining to comply with our terms." Zorgith felt a surge of rage mixed with disbelief. "Scan that vessel again. Full spectrum." Moments later, Keldrax reported with growing alarm. "Commander, revised analysis indicates advanced weapons systems. Energy readings are off our standard scales. Their shielding technology appears to be. I can't even properly analyze it. Impossible, Vrax Dismi said. No species could develop such technology without our knowledge." "They know my name," Zorgith said quietly, ignoring his second-in-command. That simple fact disturbed him more than he cared to admit. Tactical display. The main screen shifted to show relative positions. The solitary vessel, the Aegis, was now clearly visible, approaching steadily. Against 15 Cathar warships, it should have appeared insignificant. Somehow it didn't. Zorgith made his decision. Battle stations. All vessels form attack pattern dominance. Target that ship, but hold fire until my command. As the fleet moved into the familiar attack formation, Zorgith considered his options. The unknown vessel showed no signs of intimidation despite being dramatically outnumbered. Either they were fools, or they possessed capabilities beyond his understanding. There was only one way to determine which. All vessels, fire warning salvos. Standard energy weapons only. Let's see how they respond. The space around the Cathar fleet lit up as multiple vessels fired precision bursts, deliberately missing the approaching ship, but demonstrating the fleet's firepower. It was a standard intimidation tactic that had broken the will of countless opponents before actual combat began. The response was immediate and unsettling. The Aegis altered course with impossible speed, executing maneuvers that should have torn apart any spacecraft Zorgith had ever encountered. The inertial forces alone would have killed any crew. "How are they moving like that?" Keldrax exclaimed. "The acceleration forces should be. They're targeting us." Mordcal interrupted, his voice tight. "Multiple weapons locks. Impossible Vrax snarled. One vessel cannot target our entire fleet simultaneously. All vessels, evasive pattern." Zorgith commanded, instinct overriding protocol. Full weapons release, all batteries. The Cathar fleet erupted with firepower, filling space with a web of destruction that should have annihilated any target regardless of defenses. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles converged on the lone human vessel. What happened next would forever change Zorgith's understanding of warfare. The Aegis moved through the barrage as though navigating a light rainfall. Energy beams bent away from the ship or dissipated harmlessly against invisible barriers. Torpedoes detonated prematurely, creating spectacular but ineffective explosions. Kinetic rounds were either dodged with contemptuous ease or deflected by fields of force never before witnessed by Kthar sensors. They're completely avoiding our targeting solutions, Mordcal reported, disbelief evident in his voice. It's as if they know our firing patterns before we execute them. Impossible, Vrax repeated, but his voice lacked conviction now. Then the Aegis returned fire. There was no massive barrage, no desperate attempt to match the Kthar's overwhelming numbers with equal firepower. Instead, the human vessel fired with surgical precision. A single beam of coherent energy, impossibly focused, struck the Kthar cruiser relentless fury. The beam passed through the vessel's shields as though they weren't there, pierced the reinforced hull, and surgically disabled its main power core without detonating it. The massive warship went dark, drifting helplessly. Relentless fury reports complete systems failure. Thraxa announced, voice trembling. No casualties, but the vessel is disabled. Before Zorgith could respond, a second beam lanced out from the Aegis, striking another cruiser with identical results. Then a third. Targeting solutions aren't working, Mordcal reported frantically. Their defensive maneuvers are beyond our prediction algorithms. Within minutes, half the Kthar fleet hung powerless in space, disabled with terrifying precision. Not a single vessel had been destroyed, a fact that Zorgith found more disturbing than outright destruction. The humans were demonstrating not just superior technology, but complete control of the engagement. The invincible Dominion shuddered as something struck its shields. Direct hit to our port shielding array, Mordcal reported. Shields at 60% and failing. Return fire, all remaining batteries. Zorgith ordered. We are firing, Commander, Mordcal responded, desperation in his voice. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. Another precise hit rocked the flagship, and main power fluctuated. Secondary systems failing. Weapons offline, Mordcal reported. The tactical display showed the grim reality. 9 of the 15 Kthar vessels now drifted powerless. The remaining ships, including the flagship, were damaged and struggling to maintain position. The Aegis remained untouched, maneuvering between them with impossible grace. The communications system activated again. Captain Rostova's voice, still calm and measured, filled the bridge. Commander Zorgith, this demonstration was controlled and limited. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the opening moments of engagement. Your weapons technology is approximately 70 years behind current Terran standard. Your propulsion systems, 120 years. Your shields, nearly 200. Zorgith stared at the view screen, struggling to process the implications. The Kthar Empire, which had dominated known space for 20 millennia, outmatched as though they were children playing at war. Who are you? He finally asked, pride giving way to a desperate need to understand. We are humanity, Commander. We've been observing the Kthar Empire for some time. Your expansion has reached territories we consider protected. This meeting was inevitable. Another hit struck the flagship, and main power failed completely. Emergency lighting cast the bridge in an eerie red glow. All weapons and engines disabled, Mordcal reported quietly. We are defenseless. Vrax, the proud subcommander who had been so dismissive minutes earlier, turned to Zorgith with shock evident in his eyes. Commander, what do we do? Zorgith had never faced defeat. Kthar commanders were trained from birth to achieve victory or die gloriously. No protocol existed for this situation. Yet the lives of thousands of his crew now depended on his decision. Open communications, he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. When the channel opened, he spoke with dignity. Captain Rostova, you have demonstrated your technological superiority. State your terms. Wise decision, Commander, Rostova replied. Maintain your current position. Power down all remaining systems except life support and communications. A delegation from the Aegis will board your vessel for direct discussions. We will arrive in 30 minutes. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. You cannot seriously be considering surrender, Vrax hissed, keeping his voice low enough that only Zorgith could hear. No Kthar commander has surrendered in 10,000 years. And no Kthar fleet has been defeated so completely in that same time. Zorgith responded coldly. We face something beyond our understanding. I will not sacrifice thousands of lives for pride. He addressed the bridge crew. Secure all stations. Disable weapons, but maintain safeguards on critical systems. Prepare the diplomatic reception chamber for visitors. Then, to his security chief, honor guard only. No visible weapons. As his orders were carried out, Zorgith stood alone at the command platform, contemplating how quickly certainty had transformed into chaos. Everything he knew about his empire's place in the universe had been upended in less than an hour. The Kthar Empire was no longer the unchallenged master of known space, and he would be the one to deliver this unthinkable news to the Imperial High Command. 30 minutes later, Commander Zorgith stood rigidly in the diplomatic reception chamber, flanked by 6 honor guards in formal battle dress. The chamber, designed to intimidate visitors with its towering dimensions and displays of Kthar military history, now seemed hollow in its pretensions. The airlocks cycled, indicating the arrival of the human delegation. Zorgith straightened, determined to maintain dignity in defeat. The inner doors slid open, and the humans entered. Zorgith's first sight of humanity was nothing like he expected. They were smaller than Kthar, with soft-looking skin instead of protective plates. They walked on 2 legs like many species, but their build seemed almost fragile compared to his own warriors. Yet there was nothing fragile about their bearing or the advanced combat suits they wore. Captain Eva Rostova led the group, immediately identifiable by her distinct armor and the authority in her movements. She was pale-skinned with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything with extraordinary speed. 4 other humans accompanied her, each wearing combat armor that made their frames appear more substantial. Commander Zorgith, Rostova said, her voice matching the one from communications. Thank you for your cooperation. Zorgith performed the formal Kthar greeting for an equal, a gesture that would have shocked his superiors. Captain Rostova, you have my attention and, apparently, my vessel. I would understand the meaning of this. Intervention. Rostova nodded, acknowledging both his courtesy and his question. Your fleet crossed a boundary established by the Terran Confederacy, a boundary we have maintained, undetected by your empire, for nearly 70 years. Impossible, Vrax interjected from behind Zorgith. Our stellar cartography is comprehensive. No such boundary exists. One of the humans, a tall figure whose armor bore different markings, spoke up. Your cartography is impressive, but limited by your technology. There are aspects of space-time manipulation that your sciences haven't yet discovered. Rostova continued. The Terran Confederacy encompasses 27 star systems within this region of space alone. We have established colonies, trade routes, and defensive perimeters that your sensors cannot detect due to technological limitations. If what you say is true, Zorgith responded carefully, why reveal yourselves now? You clearly could have remained hidden. Your expansion patterns have changed, Rostova explained. Previous Kthar expeditions skirted our territories. Recent directives from your Imperial Council have pushed directly toward worlds under our protection. Some contain pre-spaceflight civilizations we are monitoring. Others are potential colonies. We needed to establish boundaries before direct conflict became inevitable. Zorgith processed this information, mind racing. You've been studying us. For decades, Rostova confirmed. We know your language, culture, military doctrine, and governmental structure. We understand your expansion philosophy and the belief system that drives it. Then you know the Empire will not accept this intrusion, Vrax said. When we fail to report, they will send a much larger force. Rostova's expression remained neutral. That would be unfortunate. What happened today was a measured response with minimal damage and no casualties. A larger conflict would not be so surgical. The implied threat hung in the air. "I need to report to my superiors," Zorgith said. "They will demand explanations." "You will be permitted to do so," Rostova nodded. "In fact, we insist upon it. But first, there is something you should see." She gestured, and one of her officers activated a device on his wrist. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a three-dimensional star map far more detailed than anything Zorgith had ever seen. "This is the actual configuration of this sector," Rostova explained. "The blue regions represent Cathar-controlled space. The green indicates Terran Confederacy territories and protectorates." Zorgith stared in growing disbelief. According to this map, the human territories extended far beyond what should have been possible, wrapping around and even passing through sections of what the Cathar had considered their unchallenged domain. "This cannot be accurate," Vrax protested. "We would have detected." "Your detection technologies are limited," the technical officer interrupted. "We employ quantum masking fields and gravitational lensing to conceal our presence. Your sensors interpret our territories as empty space or natural phenomena." Rostova continued. "This map also shows our fleet deployments." Red dots appeared throughout the green sections, each representing what the attached data suggested were battle groups comparable to or larger than Zorgith's own. "You're claiming to have maintained a massive civilization alongside ours, completely undetected," Zorgith said slowly. "Why should I believe this isn't an elaborate deception? One advanced ship doesn't prove the existence of an entire confederacy." Rostova smiled slightly, the first real expression she had shown. "A fair question. Perhaps a demonstration is in order." She made a subtle gesture, and suddenly the holographic display changed, showing real-time footage of various locations, sprawling cities on planets Zorgith didn't recognize, massive space stations, shipyards, constructing vessels similar to the Aegis, but in various sizes and configurations. "These are live feeds from our territories," Rostova explained. "Some are within systems you believe to be uninhabited." The implications were staggering. If this human confederacy truly existed on this scale, the strategic reality of the entire sector was fundamentally different from what the Empire believed. "I must report this to the Imperial High Command," Zorgith said, his mind already racing with the diplomatic and military implications. "You will," Rostova confirmed, "but they may not believe you. That's why we're providing comprehensive data packets that your scientists can verify." One of the human officers stepped forward, offering a data crystal. "This contains information about our territories, scientific evidence of our presence, and proposed boundary agreements. It also includes communication protocols for diplomatic contact." Vrax looked at the crystal with suspicion. "It could contain infiltration programs or viruses." "It contains exactly what we claim," Rostova said firmly. "You can examine it in isolated systems first, of course. We have no interest in crippling your technology. If we wanted that, we would have done so already." The logic was undeniable, which made the situation all the more disturbing. Before Zorgith could respond, the ship's emergency alert system activated. Warning lights flashed throughout the chamber. "Commander!" Thrax's voice came through the communication system. "Multiple unknown vessels have appeared at the edge of the system. They're not human or Cathar. Configuration matches historical records of the Krylek swarm." Zorgith felt a chill run through his body. The Krylek, a nomadic predator species that traveled in massive hive fleets, consuming all resources in their path. They hadn't been seen in this sector for centuries, believed to have migrated to the galactic rim. Rostova and her team exchanged glances, clearly understanding the Cathar communication. "How many vessels?" Zorgith demanded. "At least 40, Commander. Approach vector suggests they detected our disabled fleet. They're accelerating." The Krylek were opportunistic raiders, known for attacking damaged vessels. A disabled Cathar fleet would present an irresistible target. Rostova touched a device on her wrist. "Rostova to Aegis. Situation report." A voice responded in what Zorgith assumed was the human language before switching to Cathar. "Captain, we're tracking multiple Krylek vessels entering the system. Intelligence suggests this is a splinter fleet, possibly driven back from the outer reach by Confederacy expansion. They appear to be mounting an opportunistic raid on the disabled Kthar vessels. Zorgith faced Rostova directly. My fleet is defenseless because of your actions. If the Krylek attack, thousands of my people will die. A moment of tension hung between them. Then Rostova nodded decisively. We'll handle this. Commander Zorgith, I suggest you begin emergency repairs to your vessels. We'll buy you time. 1 ship against 40? Vrax asked incredulously. Rostova's expression hardened slightly. The Aegis isn't alone. She spoke into her communication device again, this time in her native language. A rapid exchange followed, and then she turned back to Zorgith. Commander, if you'll access your sensor controls, you might find the readings. Interesting. Zorgith moved to a nearby console and activated the main sensor display. What he saw defied belief. Where moments before there had been empty space surrounding his fleet, now nearly a dozen vessels were appearing, seemingly materializing from nowhere. Each bore the sleek design characteristics of the Aegis, though they varied in size and configuration. Cloaking technology, he murmured, understanding dawning. You had a battle group with us the entire time. We call it a security detail, Rostova corrected. Standard procedure when making first contact with potentially hostile forces. The implications were staggering. They had been surrounded by a superior force from the beginning, completely unaware. Your ships will engage the Krylek. Zorgith asked. Yes. We suggest you focus on repairs. The Krylek will be dealt with. Rostova turned to leave, then paused. Consider this an opportunity, Commander. A chance to observe Terran capabilities in a different context. As the human delegation departed, Zorgith immediately activated the ship-wide communication system. All repair teams, Priority 1, restore defensive systems and engines. Communications, establish links with all vessels capable of response. Within minutes, the view screens showed the human vessels moving into formation, accelerating toward the approaching Krylek fleet with impossible speed. The Aegis led the formation, flanked by 2 slightly larger vessels, with the remainder forming a perfect geometric pattern behind them. Magnify, Zorgith ordered, watching intently. The tactical display showed the Krylek fleet, a chaotic swarm of biomechanical vessels, each an irregular, chitinous nightmare. They had evolved from hive-mind insectoids, and their technology reflected their origins. Organic ships grown rather than built, weapons that functioned like natural predator adaptations. Under normal circumstances, a Krylek swarm of this size would pose a serious threat even to a fully operational Kthar battle fleet. Against disabled vessels, they would be devastating. The human vessels accelerated to speeds that Kthar engines could never achieve, their formation shifting with perfect coordination. The Krylek responded predictably, breaking their approach into smaller attack clusters, a hunting tactic designed to surround and overwhelm prey. What happened next was beyond anything Zorgith had witnessed in 3 decades of military service. The human vessels did not engage in traditional space combat. Instead, they executed maneuvers that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. Ships would appear to be in one position, then instantly shift to another without the expected acceleration curve. Weapons fire from the Krylek passed through empty space where human vessels had been milliseconds earlier. When the humans returned fire, their weapons displayed capabilities that defied Kthar understanding of physics. Beams that curved to track evasive targets. Energy pulses that passed through Krylek shields as though they were non-existent. Projectiles that appeared to accelerate beyond light speed before impact. Are you recording this? Zorgith asked quietly. Yes, Commander, Keldrax confirmed, his voice barely above a whisper. Though I doubt Imperial Science Division will believe it's authentic. Within 20 minutes, half the Krylek fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The remainder began a disorganized retreat, their swarm mentality breaking down in the face of incomprehensible opposition. Not a single human vessel appeared to have sustained significant damage. As the last Krylek ships fled the system, the human vessels returned to positions around the Kthar fleet. The Aegis approached the invincible Dominion directly. "Commander," Thraxa reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Captain Rostova." "Put it through," Zorgith ordered. Rostova's voice came through clearly. "The Krylek threat has been neutralized, Commander. Their remaining vessels are retreating to the outer void. They won't trouble this sector again. Your intervention is appreciated," Zorgith acknowledged, the words unfamiliar on his tongue. "My crew is working to restore basic functions. We should have propulsion within the hour." "Good. Once your fleet is operational, you will be escorted to your territorial boundary. I suggest you use the journey to review the data we provided." Zorgith hesitated, then asked the question foremost in his mind. "Your vessels displayed capabilities beyond our scientific understanding. The way they moved, the weapons they employed, was this another demonstration for our benefit?" "No, Commander," Rostova replied. "That was standard Terran combat protocol against Class 3 threats. The Krylek are well known to us. We've encountered their kind in multiple sectors." "I see." Zorgith processed this sobering information. "And how would you classify the Cathar Empire in your threat assessment?" A brief pause. "Currently, Class 2.5. Significant conventional forces, but limited by technological constraints. Capable of causing damage, but not existential threat to Confederacy interests." The clinical assessment stung Zorgith's pride, but he couldn't dispute its accuracy after what he'd witnessed. "One final question, Captain. Your Confederacy clearly possesses technology far beyond ours. Why reveal yourselves now? You could have remained hidden, observing us indefinitely." "Policy shift," Rostova replied directly. "Until recently, our directive was non-interference with developing stellar nations. However, your empire's expansion pattern changed, threatening several protectorate worlds. Rather than simply destroying your incursions, diplomatic contact was authorized." "Diplomatic contact," Zorgith repeated, gesturing at his disabled flagship. "Is that what you call this?" "First contact protocols with militaristic, expansionist empires require clear demonstrations of capability," Rostova explained, without apology. "Otherwise, diplomatic overtures are historically misinterpreted as weakness. We studied your culture extensively before designing this encounter." Before Zorgith could respond, an urgent alert sounded on the bridge. "Commander," Keldrax called out, "we're detecting a transitional signature at the system edge. Multiple vessels emerging. Cathar signatures." Zorgith felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Identification: Imperial Diplomat-class cruiser, Sovereign Decree," Keldrax reported. "Escorted by security. Detail: It's High Executor Dravax's personal vessel." The appearance of the Imperial High Command's senior representative complicated matters exponentially. Dravax was known for his unwavering belief in Cathar superiority and his hardline approach to alien species. "Captain Rostova," Zorgith said quickly, "a diplomatic envoy from our Imperial High Command has arrived. High Executor Dravax is not known for his diplomatic flexibility. This situation could deteriorate rapidly." "Understood," Rostova replied. "We anticipated this possibility. Maintain your position, Commander. We'll handle the diplomatic contact." The communication ended, leaving Zorgith to contemplate the impending confrontation between the most hawkish member of the Imperial leadership and a civilization with technology centuries beyond their own. "Give me a channel to the Sovereign Decree," he ordered. "I need to brief the High Executor before he takes action based on incomplete information." "Channel opening," Thraxa confirmed. "But Commander, how much should we tell him?" Zorgith considered the question carefully. "The truth, but carefully presented. If we can prevent an escalation here, we may save countless lives." The view screen activated, showing the imperious figure of High Executor Dravax. His ceremonial armor gleamed with the emblems of a dozen successful conquest campaigns, and his expression conveyed immediate disapproval. "Commander Zorgith," he began without preamble, "your fleet failed to report at the designated interval. Our long-range sensors detected weapons discharge and disabled Cathar vessels. Explain this disgraceful situation." Zorgith straightened, speaking with the precision required when addressing the High Command. High Executor, we have encountered a previously unknown civilization calling themselves the Terran Confederacy. They possess technology significantly beyond our current capabilities and claim territorial rights to portions of this sector. Dravax's expression darkened. No species claims territory from the Empire, Commander. Your duty was to eliminate any such presumption. With respect, High Executor, engagement was attempted. Their technological advantage rendered our weapons ineffective. They disabled most of our fleet without casualties. Impossible, Dravax dismissed. No species possesses such capabilities. I have visual records and sensor data confirming. Enough, Dravax interrupted. Your failure will be addressed later. My fleet will handle these presumptuous aliens. Maintain your position. The communication cut off before Zorgith could respond. He turned to his tactical officer. Status of the human vessels? They've altered formation, Mordcal reported, spreading out to create a barrier between us and the incoming Cthar fleet. And our systems? Limited propulsion restored. Basic shields at 30% capacity. Weapons remain offline. Zorgith nodded grimly. Prepare for potential combat maneuvers, but do not, under any circumstances, power weapons systems without my direct order. The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances but acknowledged the command. On the main view screen, Dravax's fleet approached rapidly. One diplomatic cruiser escorted by 8 heavy warships. They maintained an aggressive formation, weapons systems visibly powered. They're hailing the human vessels, Thraxa reported. Let's hear it, Zorgith ordered. Dravax's imperious voice filled the bridge. Unidentified vessels. This is High Executor Dravax of the Imperial Cthar Navy. You have interfered with Empire operations and damaged Imperial property. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded or be destroyed. Almost identical to Zorgith's own initial response, he realized with uncomfortable clarity. Rostova's reply came swiftly. High Executor Dravax. I am Captain Eva Rostova of the Terran Confederacy. Your vessels are approaching contested space. We request you decelerate and establish diplomatic communications before proceeding further. There is no contested space, Dravax responded coldly. Only Imperial territory. Your surrender is non-negotiable. Zorgith tensed, recognizing the dangerous path this exchange was following. Give me a channel to Dravax now. Before communications could establish the link, the tactical display showed Dravax's fleet launching weapons. Multiple energy beams and projectiles streaked toward the human vessels. Just as before, the human ships evaded with impossible precision. Unlike the earlier engagement with Zorgith's fleet, however, they immediately returned fire. The results were devastating. Precise energy beams struck the weapons arrays of the Cthar vessels, disabling them without destroying the ships themselves. Within moments, 7 of the 8 escort vessels drifted powerless, their main systems offline. Only Dravax's diplomatic cruiser remained untouched, though it had ceased its advance. They're being more aggressive than they were with us, Vrax observed. They disabled our fleet gradually as a demonstration. This was immediate and comprehensive. They know they're dealing with Imperial High Command now, Zorgith replied. Different tactical considerations. A new transmission came through. Dravax again, his voice tight with suppressed rage. What manner of trickery is this? He demanded. No species possesses such capabilities. Rostova's response was measured but firm. This is not trickery, High Executor. This is the reality of our technological disparity. We have disabled your escort vessels with minimal damage. No personnel casualties have been reported. I again invite you to establish diplomatic communications. The Cthar Empire does not negotiate under duress, Dravax responded, though his options were clearly limited. Then consider this an educational exchange rather than a negotiation, Rostova countered. We will transmit data regarding our territorial claims and proposed boundaries. Review it at your leisure. In the meantime, Commander Zorgith's fleet will be escorted to your recognized territory as a gesture of goodwill. Before Dravax could respond, alarms blared across all Kthar vessels. Multiple contacts, Keldrax shouted. Massive energy signatures at the system's edge. The view screen shifted to show a disturbing sight. A swirling vortex of energy was forming, far larger than any jump point Zorgith had ever witnessed. From within it emerged massive, asymmetrical shapes, like no vessels any Kthar had seen before. "What are those?" Brax whispered. Even the humans appeared surprised. Rostova's voice came through on an open channel. "All vessels, defensive positions. Commander Zorgith, High Executor. These are not Confederacy ships." The vortex expanded, and more of the strange vessels emerged. Massive construct that seemed to defy conventional design principles. They weren't ships so much as moving structures, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns. "Analysis?" Zorgith demanded. Keldrax worked frantically at his console. "Unknown configuration. Energy readings off all established scales. They're enormous, Commander. The largest is at least 20 times the mass of your flagship. They're broadcasting," Thraxa reported, adjusting her equipment. I'm not sure this is even language." Attempting to process. The bridge speakers emitted a series of harmonic tones and sub-bass vibrations that made the very deck plates resonate. The pattern repeated 3 times before shifting to a crude approximation of Kthar speech. Space anomaly detected. Indigenous conflict observed. Intervention protocol activated. Cease hostilities for evaluation. The message repeated in what Zorgith assumed was the human language. "Commander," Thraxa said urgently. "We're receiving a private transmission from Captain Rostova." "Put it through," Zorgith ordered immediately. Rostova appeared on a secondary screen, her expression grave. "Commander Zorgith, our databases contain no record of these entities. Their technology appears to operate on principles beyond our current understanding. We're detecting dimensional distortions consistent with transspatial engineering." "What are you suggesting?" Zorgith asked. "I'm suggesting we both face something unknown and potentially more advanced than either of our civilizations. I propose an immediate cessation of our conflict and a joint response to this new situation." Zorgith understood the implications instantly. "Agreed. But High Executor Dravax? We're already communicating with him," Rostova interrupted. "He's reluctant, but the situation leaves little choice." The main view screen shifted to show Dravax's face, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "Commander Zorgith, these developments are unprecedented. Until we understand what we're facing, Imperial protocol dictates a unified response." "Yes, High Executor," Zorgith acknowledged, surprised by the pragmatic approach. "Shall we establish joint communications with the Terran vessels?" Dravax's mandibles tightened, a sign of extreme displeasure, but he nodded sharply. "Proceed. But this temporary cooperation changes nothing regarding the Empire's position on territorial violations." Within minutes, a 3-way communication link was established between Zorgith's flagship, Dravax's cruiser, and the Aegis. The strange vessels had arranged themselves in a loose formation around all of them, neither attacking nor retreating. "They're scanning us," Rostova reported. "All of us. The energy patterns suggest they're performing deep structural analysis down to the molecular level." "To what purpose?" Dravax demanded. "Unknown," Rostova admitted. "But they clearly have the capability to destroy us all if that was their intention. The fact that they've initiated communication suggests other motives." Zorgith studied the nearest of the alien vessels on his view screen. Its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid, yet sensors indicated it was solid. Patterns of light pulsed across its hull in complex sequences. "Could they be a spacefaring variant of the Quantum Collective?" he suggested, referring to a theoretical entity discussed in obscure Kthar scientific texts. Rostova looked surprised. "You've encountered quantum consciousness constructs before." "Only in theoretical models," Zorgith clarified. Ancient texts reference entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime. The strange harmonic broadcast resumed, this time more refined. Indigenous species identified. Cthar Empire, biological hierarchy, expansion protocol. Terran Confederacy, biological collective, containment protocol. Conflict pattern recognized. Intervention authorized under Precursor Directive 7. Everyone on the bridge exchanged confused glances. Precursors? Brax whispered. Like the mythological creators? They appear to be categorizing us, Rostova observed. And they've decided our conflict warrants their intervention. Unacceptable, Dravax declared. No external force dictates to the Empire. As if in response to his defiance, one of the massive alien vessels moved closer to Dravax's cruiser. A beam of soft blue light enveloped the Cthar ship. They've established some kind of energy field around the High Executor's vessel, Keldrax reported. Not destructive, more like a containment field. High Executor, Zorgoth called urgently. I recommend against any aggressive action. Before Dravax could respond, the alien entities broadcast again. Territorial dispute identified. Resolution protocol initiated. Historical archives accessed. Establishing neutral communication framework. The blue light intensified around all vessels, Cthar and human alike. Zorgoth felt a strange sensation, as though the very fabric of reality around them was being altered. They're creating some kind of localized space-time bubble, Rostova reported, her voice betraying rare uncertainty. I've never seen anything like this technology. The energy field stabilized, and suddenly a new holographic projection appeared simultaneously on all vessels. It showed a detailed three-dimensional map of the sector, but with configurations unlike any chart Zorgoth had seen. Ancient stellar formations, long-dead stars, and planetary systems that no longer existed were clearly visible. This is impossible, Keldrax whispered. These configurations are from millions of years ago. The alien voice continued, now perfectly translated into both Cthar and human languages. This sector once housed experimental biodiversity initiatives by the Precursor Collective. Both Cthar and human species were seeded as part of long-term evolutionary studies. Neither holds inherent territorial priority. Conflict resolution must be achieved through mutual recognition and defined boundaries. Silence fell across all communication channels as both species processed this extraordinary claim. They're suggesting we're both experimental species? Brax finally said, disbelief evident in his voice. Created by these precursors? Dravax added, clearly struggling with the concept. Rostova's expression had shifted to one of intense focus. The implications are significant, but more immediately relevant is their insistence on resolving our territorial dispute. Zorgoth studied the ancient star map carefully. If what these entities claimed was true, it fundamentally altered the Cthar Empire's understanding of their own origins and place in the cosmos. The theological implications alone would send shockwaves through imperial society. What exactly are they proposing? He asked carefully. The answer came immediately as the holographic display shifted, showing a new configuration of the contested space. Clear boundaries appeared, dividing regions between Cthar and human territories, with several areas designated as neutral or protected zones. Proposed spatial allocation based on current development trajectories and biosphere protection requirements, the alien voice explained. Acceptance will result in precursor oversight withdrawal. Rejection will necessitate continued intervention. In other words, Zorgoth realized, accept this arrangement or face continued interference from entities with technology neither civilization could hope to match. This is coercion, Dravax protested. This is reality, High Executor, Zorgoth countered, surprising himself with his boldness. We face entities operating at technological levels beyond both our civilizations. The prudent course is dialogue rather than defiance. Dravax fell silent, clearly torn between imperial doctrine and the undeniable reality before him. Rostova spoke next. I am not authorized to accept territorial revisions without Confederacy Council approval. However, I can agree to preliminary terms pending formal ratification. The alien response came swiftly. Temporary arrangement acceptable. Monitoring will continue until formal agreement established. Delegations from both species will be transported to neutral facility for detailed negotiations within one planetary rotation. Before anyone could respond, the blue energy fields surrounding their vessels dissipated. The massive alien constructs began moving back toward the swirling vortex from which they had emerged. As suddenly as they had appeared, the strange vessels vanished, leaving only the Kthar and human fleets facing each other across the void. "Well," Rostova said after a moment of stunned silence, "it seems we have a new context for our discussions." "Indeed," Zorgith agreed, mind racing with the implications. "High Executor, I recommend we accept the proposed negotiation framework. The alternative appears problematic." Dravax's expression was unreadable, but he nodded stiffly. "The Imperial High Command must be informed of these developments immediately. Commander Zorgith, you will prepare a complete report on both the human encounter and these precursor entities." "Yes, High Executor." Captain Rostova, Dravax continued, addressing the human directly for the first time. "I will assign a diplomatic delegation to these mandated negotiations. Until then, maintain your current position and take no further action against Imperial vessels." Rostova nodded. "Agreed, High Executor. We will prepare our own delegation and await further instructions regarding the neutral facility location." As communications ended, Zorgith found himself in the unprecedented position of experiencing something few Kthar ever admitted to: uncertainty about the future. The Empire's position in the cosmos, once seemingly assured and predestined, now appeared as just one experiment among many in a universe far stranger than their philosophies had prepared them for. "Commander," Vrax said quietly, moving closer to Zorgith's position, "this changes everything, doesn't it?" Zorgith watched the view screen where the human vessels maintained their position, no longer enemies but not yet allies. "Yes, Subcommander. I believe it does." One day later, Zorgith stood in the observation lounge of his flagship, watching as the small diplomatic shuttle prepared to depart for the coordinates provided by the precursor entities. The vessel contained representatives from both the Kthar Empire and the Terran Confederacy, an arrangement that would have been unthinkable mere days ago. Captain Rostova entered the lounge, now dressed in what appeared to be formal diplomatic attire rather than combat armor. Even in this more ceremonial garb, she maintained the confident bearing that had impressed Zorgith during their first encounter. "Commander Zorgith," she greeted him, "your diplomatic team is ready?" "As ready as possible, given the circumstances," he replied. High Executor Dravax insisted on leading the delegation himself. Rostova nodded. "Our council has sent Ambassador Chun." She stopped herself. "Forgive me. Ambassador Elena Vartion will represent the Confederacy. She has extensive experience in first contact scenarios." "This hardly qualifies as a typical first contact," Zorgith observed. "No," Rostova agreed with a hint of a smile. "Nothing about this situation follows established protocols." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the final preparations for the diplomatic mission. "I've studied the historical data you provided," Zorgith said finally. "Your species' development trajectory is remarkable. From planetary civilization to interstellar confederacy in less than 3 centuries. Necessity drove much of our advancement," Rostova explained. "Earth, our homeworld, faced numerous existential crises that accelerated technological development. And once we ventured into space, we encountered both wonders and threats that required rapid adaptation." "Like the Kthar Empire?" Zorgith asked, a note of irony in his voice. "Actually, no. You weren't the first expansionist empire we encountered, though you were certainly the largest." She paused. "We found that most spacefaring species fall into similar patterns: expansion, colonization, occasionally conquest. It seems to be a natural evolutionary path. And yet your confederacy chose a different approach." concealment rather than conquest. Rostova turned to face him directly. Our history taught us that power doesn't always require visibility. Sometimes, the ability to choose when and how you exert influence is more valuable than constant demonstration of strength. A philosophy at odds with Cathar doctrine, Zorgith acknowledged. Perhaps, but doctrines can evolve when presented with new information. She gestured toward the view screen, where the coordinates for the neutral facility glowed. Like the information we'll both receive today, the shuttle's engines ignited, and the small vessel began its journey toward the mysterious meeting point, a joint mission with a shared purpose, despite all that divided them. Whatever we discover about these precursors and their claims, Zorgith said, the relationship between our civilizations has been permanently altered. Yes, Rostov agreed, though whether for better or worse remains to be seen. My training and doctrine would label you as enemies, technologically superior perhaps, but still adversaries to be overcome eventually. And what does your judgment tell you now, Commander? Beyond your training and doctrine? Zorgith considered the question carefully. That the universe is larger and more complex than the Empire has acknowledged. That perhaps there is room for more than one approach to civilization. And that facing the unknown together offers better prospects than facing it divided. Rostova nodded approvingly. Those are promising foundations for whatever comes next. As the shuttle disappeared into the distance, Zorgith reflected on how quickly certainty could transform into possibility. 3 days ago, he had led a routine patrol, secure in his understanding of the Cathar Empire's place in the cosmos. Now he stood alongside a representative of an advanced human civilization, watching as both species embarked on a journey toward truths neither had imagined. The universe had not changed, but their understanding of it had expanded dramatically. And in that expansion lay both danger and opportunity. Captain Rostova, he said as they turned to leave the observation lounge. Whatever the outcome of these negotiations, I believe our encounter will be recorded as a pivotal moment in both our histories. History is rarely kind to those who fail to adapt, Commander, she replied. Let's hope both our civilizations prove adaptable enough for what lies ahead. Together, they walked from the lounge, representatives of species that had been enemies days before, now tentative partners in an uncertain future. Beyond them, stars shone with the same indifferent light they always had, but the darkness between them seemed somehow less empty, less known, and infinitely more intriguing than before. The Cathar Empire and the Terran Confederacy stood at the threshold of a new era, one defined not by conquest or concealment, but by the shared recognition that the universe contained wonders and threats beyond either of their philosophies. And in that recognition lay the seeds of something neither had sought but both might need. Partnership in the face of cosmic mysteries that dwarfed their differences.